Hello, everyone. My name is Ana Maria Velica, and I'm your host today. Welcome to the Supply Chain Talk. Our topic today is mitigating customs compliance risks across your supply chain. I have four amazing experts, and before I invite them, I would like to welcome you all to our Supply Chain Talk today. Please, to get the full talk show experience, make sure that you register on Business Reporter website. And it would be amazing if you can engage with us and you can ask questions and make compliments, why not? Because the best comment, the best question will be rewarded with a Supply Chain Talk mug. So I would like also to now to invite on our virtual stage, as you know, my panelists, and the first guest is Ian Worth, Director at Customs Crow, UK. Hello, Ian. Can you please turn on your camera and mic?
Hello,
Yes, now
can
we
you
can
see me now?
Now we can see you and
Excellent.
hear you. Hello.
Excellent. Hello, Anna. Thank you for inviting me to take part in this event.
A few words about Ian. Ian entered the world of customs over 44 years ago and currently heads up a customs consulting team at Crow UK, helping clients to manage their customs compliance obligations as well as delivering duty savings. And his spare time is shared between his grandson, the golf course, and his passion for collecting vinyl records. Good to have you on the show. My second guest is Alicia Herman. Alicia, can you please turn on your camera and mic? Hello.
Hello, pleasure to be here today.
It's good to have you here. Alicia is Vice President, Board of Directors at Foreign Trade Zone 4647. A few words about Alicia. With 16 years of experience in global trade technology and having navigated complex trade landscapes, including the first Trump era tariffs, Alicia Herman brings deep expertise in customs compliance and strategic trade management. As a senior director at KPMG and current AWS solution manager, with a proven track record of developing global supply chain solutions and technology, Alicia is uniquely positioned to discuss today ESG compliance, customs duty management, and AI-driven trade process innovations. Amazing. My third guest is Becky Lombardo. Can you please turn on your camera and mic, please, Becky?
Hi, Anna.
Hello, Becky. Good to have you on the show. Becky Lombardo is founder at Londra Consulting. Becky has over 20 years of experience helping retailers such as Arcadia, ASOS, Match Fashion service their global e-commerce customers. Becky covers everything from factory to front door and back again. She now works as a consultant helping SME retail brands operate and grow profitably on a global scale. And when she's not tackling supply chain challenges, Becky can be found on the netball court or cooking up a storm. Amazing. Last but not least, my fourth panelist is Joe Cloherty. Joe, can you please turn on your camera and mic? Hello, Joe.
Hi there.
It's good to have you on the show. Joe is a senior commercial manager at Custom Support Group. Joe has 20 years of experience of supporting FMCGs, high-tech and luxury fashion businesses with logistics and supply chain management. Since 2020, she has specialized in customs and trade activities and supports customers with digitizing the complexities of global trade compliantly. Joe is a parent to 2 boys and currently supposed to be training for the Brighton Marathon. I consider this a warm-up, Joe, so I would like us now, as you know, the format of our show is we tackle a news item. And I think we found, and we would like to share with the audience, an amazing news item which can be used as a toolkit. Again, to get the full episode and talk show experience, if you can please click on the chat box, have it open, and you can see there the news item and you can access it. So the 2025 Customs Playbook, it's an article written by a specialist, an expert from PwC, and it's an amazing toolkit because it's like a gathering of major changes, regulations in the customs world for businesses in Europe, Switzerland, and the US. And it's good because it refers to lots of changes that impact the trade world. And one example, if I choose it, is the EU customs reform, which comes into effective as of this year. And it's about simplifying all these regulations, tariffs in the customs, but also bringing a huge digital transformation. So I would like to invite your thoughts just as a warm-up exercise. What do you think about the news item in? If you can unmute yourself, please.
I'm happy to go first. So in my work experience, I have interfaced with customs to automate filings for companies in Ireland, in UK, in the Netherlands, in Italy, in Germany, and in other countries. And I would welcome a simplified way to have those interfaces be standard, to be able to make them easy for all companies to participate in, and really the uniformity, not only from a consulting standpoint, but from an operations standpoint within an organization, having only one way to process things would be very welcome. So I think it's overdue in terms of simplification, but also automation.
Amazing. Ian, can we have your opinion, please? If you can unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting introduction there, Anna, and I suppose uniquely from the UK, we're not in the US, we're no longer in the EU, and we're certainly not in Switzerland either. So my interest in the EU reforms on customs are really sort of limited to the extent that they impact UK businesses, perhaps mostly in Northern Ireland because of Northern Ireland's unique position in being in the UK and also in the EU. So interesting to see the extent to which these reforms impact Northern Ireland outside the potential scope of the Windsor Framework as well.
Yes, indeed. Becky, what are your thoughts, please?
Yeah, so definitely coming at it probably more from the retailer perspective, actually, Anna. I think it is, I think those who are in the industry kind of can see that change has been coming for a really, really long time, not a great surprise. But actually, I think if we put ourselves in the shoes of customers who are kind of not as close to all this stuff, it is going to sound incredibly complex. And actually, I think what I'm seeing starting to happen, particularly with the US being in the news so much at the moment, is I don't think customers are going to be put off buying internationally. And I think this is the same for both D2C, direct to consumer brands, as well as wholesaler brands. But I do think they're going to be put off by some of what they will be perceiving as a kind of an increase in complexity and an increase in cost. So I think I'm kind of predicting that there's going to be more of a move to DDP terms as a preference, to both kind of help with that upfront transparency on cost from an end consumer point of view, but also for kind of smoother clearing. And that's definitely something that I'll be urging businesses to kind of be thinking about during this period of time to make sure they're servicing their international markets well.
And Joe, your thoughts about the news item?
I'm all for simplifying the processes where possible. And I think, as you just mentioned, Becky, it's that preparation piece. So really this year is about guiding customers through or how to get there for when the changes come into play. So if there's manual tasks and things going on within supply chain, how can we start to automate them so then we're prepared and ready? Because the digitalization is going to, increase productivity, reduce the time that these tasks take too. So there's lots of positives for me in this piece.
And who doesn't like simplification, standardization, especially if you are in the supply chain world? And I would like us now to go into the main topic. So when we look at mitigating customs compliance risks across supply chain, we look, first of all, we start with identifying what are those risks. And as the news as we watch the news, unfold in real time, we see crisis after crisis. If we don't have a crisis, let's create one. It's exactly what we are witnessing now with Trump imposing the tariffs on 3 countries. So for supply chain, the environment is becoming like how I like to describe it, as a black swan. Business as usual is becoming a black swan type of business as usual. So for a supply chain, sitting in mitigating the customs compliance and trading, what's your view? How do we need to identify all these complexities and risks? The ESG compliance, the product source of origins, all these new forms, new platforms that come into force. How do we mitigate all these risks? What do you think, In?
So I think there are always going to be challenges for businesses to keep pace with the changes in the customs world. I mean, there are planned changes and there are changes which come along at the drop of a hat. This week is particularly lively, shall we say, with changes due to be imposed imminently and then postponed for a month, giving a little bit of breathing space for people to think, well, okay, these changes are going to come in, or maybe they're not. How do we prepare? How do we understand what those changes, what sort of impact those changes are going to have on us? Mm-hmm. I think the big area of potential focus at the moment, given the tariffs in the US and potential retaliatory tariffs elsewhere, there's going to be impact on, particularly on e-commerce, on sales of low value packages into countries which up to now have enjoyed a relief from customs obligations and customs charges. Those are in some cases going to be caught up by the new changes, which is going to add complexity. It's going to add risk of delays and added cost to those B2C transactions.
Thank you. And yes, Elisha, how would you advise supply chain to identify the risk? Because what we are seeing, these are already issues. They are no longer risks, so they are here with us. But in terms of identifying risks, and what's your view?
So I think that for all risk, whether it's tariffs, whether it's sustainability, whether it's changing regulation, a playbook really needs to be developed from understanding your data and how to analyze it. So that will help you kind of just say, anytime a new regulation comes out, how can I use my internal data to evaluate this? So it's having that standard set of data, if possible, right? I know most of the world still operates on Excel right now, but just understanding what data is there, whether that's bill of materials, whether that's your classification database, whether that's looking at your freight forwarders, clearance receipts, whatever it may be, aggregating that together, putting a playbook in place to say, this is the data set that we need need. Now, can we identify what is our exposure based on this change? And then really from there, say, if then what? So we can start to plan outwardly. Is that pulling imports forward? Is that looking for another source supplier? Is that looking at our contract terms to see how long we're obligated to buy from a certain supplier? And then making the decisions based there. I think fundamentally one of the challenges is getting multiple sets of data owners or process owners together to agree on something. Generally, something that might be good for product development doesn't consider the total landed goods or a cost of goods that might be considered by somebody on the outbound supply chain. So it's really coming to a consensus with all of the players in the room and then running through a playbook to run scenarios.
And I like the pragmatic approach and your advice for our audience to gather the data, the historic data, because the best prediction of the future is the past. So I think this is great. Becky, what's your view in terms of identifying ESG compliance vulnerabilities or product source of origins or customs duty management risks?
Yeah, so I think Alicia made a lot of really, really good points there, and Ian too. And so kind of just, I think it probably comes down to across all of those areas, it comes down to three things: information, audit, and discipline. And that is information, exactly as Alicia says. Actually, a lot of the information is held within organizations. It's just not particularly visible, or it's not being written down, or it's not kind of being captured in a consistent way. So information is going to be absolutely critical through all of this, and ensuring that info is correct. And then the point around discipline is that point around, is it something that you can see? Is it something you can put your hands on? Are you capturing it every time? I really like kind of that point around when we're looking at contracts and running new tenders, RFPs, that these are new questions that need to be asked and weighted accordingly. Actually, they need to be not just kind of considered, but part of the decision making and award process. And then I think the final point is that piece around audit. And actually, there's some really great organizations out there, and you can learn a lot, I think, by going through kind of an audit that is not one that's been forced upon you, but something that you kind of naturally make yourself kind of look at and see if you are capturing that information and understanding where your process and people weaknesses are, to kind of keep investing in that training going forwards. And I think that audit really, really highlights some of those training needs that are needed probably across the organization, not just in the supply chain arena.
Yeah, I like a very structured supply chain info audit discipline. I love it, the way you market it. And I think info is all about keeping yourself up to date with what's coming, because it's a lot going on. And if you want to have a smooth and to avoid any disruptions and to have a very resilient supply chain, I think you need to be on top of everything. You need to be real time on the news, attending the conferences, connecting in real time with data. What's your view, Joe, in terms of identifying all these compliance risks?
What can I add? We've covered lots there. One thing that I would say is working with a specialist or an expert. So when you talk about the legislative reporting, someone who's going to come to you and tell you what the changes are and how you can implement the processes, the audits that we've talked about. Yeah, I think it's a key piece. I also think the centralizing customs and trade activities. So when we talk about digitalization, that pushes that central conversation to have a point, of truth, that data source, visibility. So when you hear about a legislative change coming in, you can pinpoint, where is this going to affect us and what do we need to look at? So I think there's definite benefits in working with people who will come to you with the information that you need, is definitely a positive, as well as the visibility on the data. That's another key thing for me on governance.
I like the expertise point you mentioned, Joe, and it reminds me of my days as a former head of supply chain in a very critical business, infant formula, where I was in front of the upcoming Brexit regulations. We were 100% import business, so as you can imagine, I had to be all over. Identifying the risks, and the company took a decision to implement a task force. So for 6 months, we were working as a task force across the businesses, regardless the leadership position. It was the best experts in one virtual room on a weekly basis, tracking all the risks across the board. It was so powerful, and we were after identifying, we were ranking and assessing. So in terms of assessing, now that we identified all this, we have the experts, we have the playbook, we have everything, and our expertise and experts at the table. How do we assess the risks? If we look at the severity and likelihood, when we look at when we talk about customs regulations, how do we assess these risks? What's your view?
Some great points there, particularly on expertise. And one of the big challenges that I see with the companies we deal with is where that expertise sits within a company. The customs function within a company is not always clearly defined. Sometimes it sits within the tax function, sometimes it's in transport or logistics or legal, and sometimes it's just not there at all. So the companies are going to have challenges in understanding their customs footprint with any accuracy before they can even start to assess the risk and their compliance strategy. So that's the first thing to understand. How do companies manage their compliance? Who do they rely on? A lot of companies rely on brokers without necessarily understanding the way that brokers work. So there's the challenges in understanding what is being declared and how that declaration is made up. What control does a company have over the data which feeds into that? Where are the strengths and weaknesses in obtaining that data in order to make that declaration compliant? And where are the balances and checks afterwards to make sure that what the company wanted to be declared has actually been declared? Because those are the things which are going to be picked up on a customs audit. And if a company hasn't got it right, then potentially there's a 3-year liability sitting and waiting, and perhaps going to catch somebody out.
Exactly, Ian. Very good point there. What kind of expertise you are looking for and where you are looking into, and having the lessons learned, yeah? Because if mistakes can be made, but let's learn from mistakes and continuously improve. What's your view, Alicia, in terms of assessing the risks of customs irregularities and global trade disruptions?
Yes, so this is a bit challenging. I think I'll piggyback off a couple things. Joe mentioned having a centralized area that is kind of the source of truth or the center of excellence for trade programs. And I think that is very essential when you're identifying risk, is there are lots of competing priorities within its own organization. And then Becky also mentioned an audit. So for me, an audit structure is really a way to interrogate how we're operating. And we can use our mission, vision, corporate tenets to understand what is our risk profile, right? What sort of customer experience do we want to have? And really start with the big picture in mind to say, out of all of these risks that we could potentially have, where do we define ourselves as an organization and putting weight on those? What is a high priority? What's a lower priority? And kind of ranking where the risk lies. And then also understanding a number behind that. Is it a time number? It takes us more time to do the right thing? Is it we can't fulfill our customer orders because we're switching suppliers? What is, the impact of each of those risks that we have identified? And then how do we mitigate those based on our company mission? So an example would be really with Trump tariffs, right? So last year, at least in the US, a lot of companies started pulling forward inventory. So they were willing to spend more and give less dividends or returns to their shareholders because they were anticipating what was coming to hopefully keep costs down in the future. So it's really that risk reward and understanding how your company wants to proceed going forward. So it's again a pragmatic approach to understanding the risk profile and then how your company would like to deal with it.
Very concrete examples, and really good mitigation of disruptions by putting the stock inventory and forward. In supply chain, I know with all the black swans, and our audience says they are rather gray swans. So with all these black and gray swans happening all the time, I think we need to be very creative in supply chain, and we need to be very to really ask our team and ask ourselves to be creative, because the risks are, yes, they can be anticipated, but some of the risks cannot be anticipated. So what's your view, Becky?
So I think just to build a bit more onto some of the points that have been made, I think this point around partner selection is going to become more and more important. So brilliant partner selection, both from an audit point of view, as Alicia's kind of already covered off really well, but also this this point around kind of then this ongoing piece, forcing a discipline and forcing kind of consistency through your processes internally. Sometimes that can be quite helpful to be done from a third party perspective. It's not always easy to kind of make these pushes internally, but actually that third party doesn't necessarily always have to be. It's very helpful to have kind of that specific customs side of that specific customs knowledge. But actually, I would also urge particularly smaller businesses to lean on some of those and really work those partnerships and put really great partnerships in place with things like their freight forwarders, with things like their carriers, and make sure that when they're selecting which of these partners to use, they're actually thinking about the capabilities in this area as well. Because, for example, if you don't have some of that info internally, or you don't know what you're missing, actually a really great carrier partner will help you work that out before you're going through customs, because actually they're acting on your behalf and they will really kind of help force a bit of that discipline for you. So I think from a pragmatic point of view, some organizations are big enough to do this in-house. Others, we have to kind of be realistic, aren't necessarily big enough to do that. But that's where partnering can really, really help.
Partnering with the right experts. And Joe, what's your take on assessing the risks?
So for me, the partnership is a big piece, and selecting somebody with the cross-functional collaboration experience. So Ian mentioned it, someone who understands the stakeholders within a business and what they need, what information they need. So for us here at Customs Support Group, we also do trade lane specific analysis. So we look at, I think Alicia also mentioned it, we do trade impact analysis. So we break out the trade lanes and we do the impact analysis alongside our customers, who understand their buying, sourcing process, but looking at the whole supply chain. So that's definitely worth investing in, because when you have that information and an issue arises, as we know, issues are always coming up. So if you have that information, you're able to make your decisions, or even select your options, narrow down your options for your, C-suite to say, this is the issue, here's our options, and you've done it all ahead of time.
And be prepared, exactly. And a really good piece of information and advice. And if we think about the perfect world of supply chain, where these machine learnings and all this AI is enabling a smoother supply chain, how do we see the use of AI-driven tools to enhance duty management, streamline customs processes, and ensure shared accountability? What would be your advice, Ian?
So AI will certainly have a place, and it's developing at some pace at the moment. What I've seen so far is that it's not totally reliable yet. That's not to say it won't be going forward, but I think there's some human interaction, some human checks and balances with the right expertise can use AI with some balances and some checks to ensure that AI doesn't run down the wrong route, doesn't give a totally wrong classification or or other piece of advice which is based on incorrect facts. AI is fed by initially human interaction, human input, but increasingly by other AI as well. So there are opportunities certainly, but there are, I would say, approach with caution at the moment. And we're all experts in our fields. We've got experience on classification, on customs valuation and customs origin rules, and we instinctively know when something doesn't look right. And I'm not sure AI yet has the ability to do that and to be able to challenge itself in those sort of ways.
Very interesting perspective. So treat it with, you would say, treat it with cautious. Trust AI, but control is better. Alicia, what's your take on AI?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Ian's perspective of keeping humans in the loop. Several years ago, I'm not sure if everyone recalls that Walmart actually created a machine learning tool to auto-classify products, but there was not a human reinforcing the decisions that were made. So the project was scrapped after millions of products were falsely classified or classified with wrong information. So I agree with that. I think in terms of AI, there are a lot of use cases that can easily help out and replace the manual tasks that are happening. Still, if you asked someone how much they're spending per order or line item on freight, they likely couldn't tell you. However, utilizing AI, we could have a visual AI tool break down the cost and use an agent to enter that data into a system so we could answer questions like that. So I think AI will play a role in almost all functions, from classification to auditing, the triangle auditing, making sure billing, invoice, shipping all match one another. I think we can even do ensuring that all of our labeling is correct with any license numbers, anything that has to be on labeling. Right now, it's a lot of data transfer going back and forth. So I think AI will indeed have its place. I think we're focused a lot right now on Gen AI, but AI and machine learning have been in supply chain for a very long time. And I think it will continue to help us understand where are all our shipments, are our customers being met, are we on time and full, without somebody using all of that headspace or looking at Excel sheets.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Alicia. I'd also just add that I think scenario modeling, particularly when kind of managing, thinking about risk and trying to work out priorities, I think scenario modeling is going to be a really, really effective way to use AI. But I totally agree with both you and Ian in your point of view that it's not something that you kind of just let run away with the train set just yet. And definitely think kind of people and process need to be in place first. But that point around kind of consistency of data, like we can set up all these brilliant processes, but actually, that point of kind of making sure that somebody does fill in, not just something that fills a gap, but is is something that is a sensible addition to a field of information. That there's those definitely, I think those kind of uses where when you're dealing with a huge SKU set and multiple markets, I think that has its place.
Amazing. Thank you, Becky. We have a question from the audience. I would like to direct it to you, Joe. So with isolationist themes coming through global trade post-pandemic, with the crossover between supply chain, finance, data, information functions. Who do the panel think is best to lead us through the next 2 years of turmoil? Plus, should we invest in smaller add-on platforms to ensure we maintain supply chain resilience? What do you think, Joe?
Big question.
It's a long one.
It is, but it's an important one because we
Yes.
talked about the stakeholders, and it's the cross functions of supply chain. It's procurement, finance, legal, because we're talking about risk and governance. So for me, it's probably more important, the add-on platforms. I would say, like we talked about, you know, near the beginning, the centralizing customs and trade functions. So if you separate your customs and trade activities and focus on those with a partner or partners, then you can use your TMS and your other logistics platforms for the use that they're intended. But in centralizing and working with experts or partners, your focus is on the customs and trade activities. And if you work with partners that understand the movement of goods, it's easy to talk back and share the information, because customs is complex, it's wordy, and what you need is someone to kind of simplify, like we talked about with digitalization, it's simplifying that piece. But really, for me, I think that the cross-function piece comes in when you realize that actually the risks are high, we need to look at this consistently and centralize it, and then we get the data visibility and able to make decisions. So that is a piece that I think is core. We're seeing it more and more. So post Brexit, and my reason really for coming into sort of the customs world is that it's kind of separated from the movement of goods, because it's different people that are involved, different teams. So yeah, that would be my. I'm not sure if that was of help. Was that?
Yeah, I think so.
Ashley?
Actually, I think also from my perspective, I think it's very much depending on the size of the business. I worked for big corporations, and they were able to invest in centralized, creating customs hubs, because they had the power and they had the scale. So I think the strategy of working with an outsourced expert, or outsourcing or creating a central hub focused on customs duties, regulations, I think it's very much depend on the industry and the power of the company. Anything to add in terms of AI, apart from what has been discussed already?
I think something to look at with AI is the extension of the customs role. It used to be the case when we were involved in making customs declarations around duty and everything which builds into that. So tariff classification, origin, and valuation. But now we need to know so much more than that when we're making declarations. We need to know not just the preferential origin of goods, but also the inputs into the goods in other countries as well. We need to know the carbon content. We need to know the extent to which Russian steel is embodied within the product which we're moving in case we're in breach of sanctions. So as the customs role evolves to embrace these other border functionalities, then yes, there's definitely a role for AI to lean in and help, particularly with some of the complex calculations for CBAM, for example, as that develops going forward.
CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanism. I would like us now, because time flies very quickly when we have fun, I would like to award the best comment, question, point of view to the Supply Chain Talk mug goes to Ashley Cook. So thank you so much for your comment, for your good question. I would like to invite my guests and my experts for a closing thought and one key action. What would you do differently? What would you advise the audience to do differently when they go back tomorrow? So one closing thought, one key action in.
My closing thought is, and we find that a lot of businesses, the people in charge don't necessarily know what their customs exposure is. So my closing thought for anybody, an action point, is to go back and understand not only how much customs duty is your business liable for, but also how do you know that it's correct?
I like it. What's your closing thought and action item, Elisha?
My closing thought is to utilize any automation or AI. The data has to be in a format that you can utilize it. So my action item would be to review your customs data and make sure there's a pipeline and it's quality data.
Really punchy and very good action item. What's your closing thought and action item, Becky?
So mine would be to get an audit done, find out where your gaps are so that you can kind of have something that's very bespoke to your business. And then I'm going to give a second one in terms of action, which is to assess kind of if you're delivering to an end consumer, if you're in the retail business, you need to have a look at closing that gap if you are not delivering to your customers' DDP. So look at what that would mean for your business and get ready to kind of work out a plan for getting that cost into your business.
Thank you, Becky. Joe?
So for me, let's have a different one. So I think customs, having worked in logistics for sort of 15 years, is a word-heavy and complex world. So I would say work with a specialist or a partner that will break down the complexity to simplify the terms and put them into actions for your business. It is out there, so I would just say try and access.
Amazing, Joe. From my side, I would invite a very collaborative leadership, create task forces, create collaboration across the company, and encourage your supply chain community to come up to create all these risks, to be creative in identifying the risks. Thank you so much. I think I love to call this not a talk show, not a supply chain talk show. I love to call it a masterclass. Thank you for your very diligent, amazing expertise. I would love to have you on my future shows. Thank you to the audience. Thank you for questions. And I would like to invite you again on the 19th of February. Our next episode will be hosted also by me. A very important topic as well. We are tackling improving supply chain risk management with better visibility. And we need visibility. So thank you so much and stay safe. Bye.